Aitzquachil, good morning. My name is Aaron Thomas. My hereditary name is Hauhitan. And today is Wednesday, July 29, 2026. We're halfway through the week. You're almost there. The weekend is right around the corner. But welcome back to this daily sovereignty report, your top source for tribal sovereignty, indigenous rights, and policy updates across Indian country and First Nations. Now, before we dive in, please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and follow me wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss a briefing. Let's get right into today's deep dive, tribal infrastructure, energy, and utility sovereignty right away. Now, according to Native News Online, the Shinnecock Indian Nation has been awarded nearly $1 million by the Environmental Protection Agency for environmental cleanup and site remediation on tribal lands. Now, why it matters is that direct grants give tribal environmental departments the resources to clean up their own lands without relying on state agencies. The opposition? Local off-reservation developers and municipal boards often challenge these direct-to-tribe grants, arguing over jurisdictional and land use boundaries. According to National Native News, the First Nations leaders in Thunder Bay are calling for independent public inquiry into Ontario, Canada's emergency management response following devastating wildfires that destroyed two northern First Nations communities. Now, why this matters is it highlights the urgent need for tribal utility and emergency management sovereignty, showing how provincial systems often fail Indigenous communities during climate disasters. The opposition? Provincial officials, they defend their protocols. They claim communication did take place and are resisting calls for independent inquiry or leadership changes. In other news this morning, according to Indians.com, the Senate Committee on Indian Affairs convened a major legislative hearing considering 5 key tribal water rights bills, including settlements for the Yavapai Apache Nation and the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians. And why this matters is that securing federally protected water rights settlements empowers tribal governments to build water treatment, agricultural, and clean energy infrastructure independently. Now, the opposition, non-native agricultural groups, city water districts, and state water boards regularly oppose these settlements out of concern over downstream water allocations and senior tribal water rights. And in other news today, according to Native News Online, Senators Lisa Murkowski and Brian Schatz formally pushed the Commodity Futures Trading Commission to conduct nation-to-nation consultations with tribes and extend comment deadlines on prediction market rules. Now, why this matters is that it forces federal regulatory agencies to respect tribal consultation mandates whenever financial or commodity regulations impact tribal economic enterprises. The opposition? Financial market regulators and private trading platforms generally favor uniform rollouts without extended tribal comment windows or sovereign exemptions. And in other news, in policy, health, and public safety, according to Native News Online, new federal legislation has been introduced to establish the CDC Emergency Set-Aside Fund specifically for tribal health departments. Now, why it matters, direct CDC funding treats tribal health departments as distinct sovereign entities equal to state health agencies, guaranteeing rapid emergency relief without state-level delays. The opposition? Some fiscal conservative lawmakers and state health agencies push to keep emergency funds centralized within state-managed budgets. And according to National Native News, tribal organizations are actively correcting public misinformation regarding FEMA emergency funding and tribal taxation. Now, why it matters, it reinforces the truth. Tribal citizens pay federal taxes and access disaster recovery as sovereign entities, debunking myths that undermine the federal trust responsibility. The opposition? Political critics and opponents of federal Indian law continue to spread false narratives claiming tribes receive special, non-taxable federal advantages. In our next section, tribal arts and culture. According to Native News Online, a major exhibition at the Burke Museum in Seattle, Washington, is spotlighting Coast Salish wool weaving practices. Why it matters. The exhibit highlights the historic, cultural, and artistic resilience of Coast Salish traditions while reaffirming tribal sovereignty over cultural intellectual property. And it's Wednesday. This is your severe weather and other alerts turning to weather. High temperatures and severe thunderstorms in the northern plains and upper Midwest continue to create flash flooding and power outages risk for Lakota and Ojibwe reservations. Meanwhile, elevated wildfire warnings and smoke alerts continue to affect First Nations in northern Ontario and tribal lands across Washington state and Oregon. On public safety, tribal law enforcement agencies remind everyone to stay vigilant, monitor local emergency channels, and share active regional missing and murdered Indigenous persons alerts. And for your upcoming tribal leader events, finally, again, looking ahead, we've got some in-person and virtual events that you might want to attend. The in-person conferences is the National Congress of American Indians Annual Convention will focus on land retention and policy. That's happening in October here in Palm Springs, California, while the NAFOA Annual Conference, I believe, is in Santa Fe, will cover tribal finance, utility structuring, and economic development. And some online training. The U.S. Department of Energy's Office of Indian Energy is hosting virtual briefings on community-scale energy project grants and microgrid planning. All right, you guys, that wraps up today's Daily Sovereignty Report. If this breakdown kept you informed, do me a huge favor. Like this video, subscribe, and share this podcast with colleagues across Indian country. Remember, you can listen to me on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you stream. Haichka, Achama, thank you so much for watching, and stay strong, stand strong in sovereignty. I'll see you again tomorrow morning for another great edition of the Daily Sovereignty Report right here